So that was, different. Big finish time on Doctor Who, because here on Council of Geeks, every single Sunday we do Doctor Who, which apparently, even though it's been that way for a while now, people, when I point that out, are like, oh, I hadn't even noticed, so I'm going to start pointing that out more regularly. But yeah, Master. So this is a Big Finish story selected by my supporters on Patreon. Thank you, guys. So, how to even talk about this one? It's different. And like I do with Big Finish, I'm going to go spoiler-free for as long as I can. And then eventually I'll have to get into spoilers for some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. But it's funny, I feel like in many ways the title of the thing is a spoiler. Or it could have been. If it was more poorly written. Because it's very, very low key. There's a framing device of the Doctor relaying a story to a guy who's getting ready to assassinate somebody. And the story being told within that framing device is about basically 3 people. Then the Doctor shows up, and then it's 4. And then and another one who kind of comes in and out. But it's a really small story. And it deals with these people in this town. And there's a guy who is the village doctor, basically. Goes by John Smith. He doesn't have memory prior to 10 years ago when he first showed up in the town. He has scars on his face that look like he was burned. And he's having his birthday. It's not his real birthday. He doesn't remember his birthday. But it's the anniversary of when he showed up. And he's celebrating it with his closest friends, this married couple. And it's them talking about their relationship and their history and diverging into philosophical tangents every now and then. And then the Doctor shows up, but that doesn't massively change the structure of the story. It's still largely just these conversations about their lives, their fears, their concerns, the thoughts that poke at their mind when they're laying in bed trying to fall asleep, kind of thing. And it's honestly, it bears more resemblance to like a 40s or 50s era haunted house story than anything else. It bears more resemblance to like The Haunting than it does to Doctor Who. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It is different, though. It's very different. And I say that largely in terms of its structure and its overall approach. The Doctor featured in this one is 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy. And so we've got basically kind of the edgier Doctor in this particular story. And obviously the Master comes into play in this eventually. I don't want to say how. Like I said, if the title of the thing wasn't Master, I would consider even saying that he's in this to be a spoiler of sorts. But it is the title, so I might as well. And we have Geoffrey Beevers returning to the part, who played the Master in Keeper of Traken. He was the deformed, desiccated version of the Master who basically possessed Tremas and turned into Anthony Ainley, who played the part for the remainder of the classic Who run. And he does good work. with what he's doing here, and we get various sides and elements to the Master. We get various sides and elements to the Doctor. And because we're really only sticking with this core, really tiny group of people, we get to know them really well as well, and they feel very fleshed out, very lived in, and their interactions feel very genuine. You know, there's some of the normal sort of dialogue contrivances that you get where that are just the nature of the beast with these audio stories in terms of, you know, getting information across to the listener or describing something that normally they would just be looking at and not actively describing. So, I mean, that's just the nature of the beast with these things. So you need to accept that going in. Overall, I did like it. I did enjoy it. I found it intriguing, and I found most of it, I found myself going, where is this going? And I did find it to be an interesting journey. There are certain elements about the last episode, because if you don't already know, if you're watching this review and aren't already a big Finnish listener, these things are broken up into 4 mini parts. They're structured like classic Who episodes. So it's basically about 2 hours broken into 4 parts, complete with intro and outro music each time. Era specific to the 7th Doctor. Natch. So in the 4th episode, the 4th section of it, there are certain specifics to what is going on that I'm kind of iffy on. Taken in a vacuum, they work. Narratively, they work. But when I try and place some of the stuff that's going on here in the greater context of Doctor Who as a whole, it doesn't quite work for me. And I'm not talking continuity. I'm just talking about some of the specific ideas that are present in the tail end of this. I'm kind of like, and they're not things that I inherently think don't work. They're just things that I'm not sure work in Doctor Who. And I can't explain that more until I get into spoilers, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to mention. Other performances are good. Supporting cast is good. Besides Geoffrey Beevers and Sylvester McCoy, there's really only 3 other people in the cast. I think there's maybe a couple of other people as well, because you get like disembodied voices whispering. Like I said, it bears more resemblance to a haunted house movie than anything else. And yeah, I think I need to start getting into spoilers. So it was good. It was different. It made me appreciate Geoffrey Beevers playing the Master more than I already did, because I actually think he was one of the better Masters of the Classic Era when it came to short stints. Definitely a heck of a lot better than I can't even remember the guy's name now who was stuck behind that locked off mask in The Deadly Assassin. But no, Beevers is good. He's solid. So I gotta get into spoilers now. So, and if you're still here, that's your warning. 3, 2, 1. This whole idea of a personification of death, like the abstract concept of death having physical form, having desires, having an agent in the Master. I mean, I'll continue to mull it over, but right now, as of time of recording, I don't think I can go there. And I think it's just a touch too abstract. Because, and sort of like I alluded to, I don't have an inherent problem with the idea of death having a personification. In fact, there are some personifications of death in various forms of fiction that I love. Neil Gaiman's death, awesome. Duh. The Marvel personification of death, yeah, honestly isn't much of a character a lot of the time, but has been used really interestingly at a few points. So I'm totally cool with the concept in general. But Doctor Who, at least to me, doesn't feel like the kind of universe that sort of thing works in. I mean, that entire idea is just a tad too ethereal. And I mean, the Doctor can and has dealt with personifications of gods effectively, but it has found a way to ground them in the reality of Doctor Who. So, you can give us an Egyptian god, but you give us Doctor Who context for it in something like Pyramid of Mars. But to have something be identified as just being death with no other explanation as to what it is, I can't quite get there. Like, I think the closest to something like that's in Doctor Who that I would accept would be something like the Black Guardian and the White Guardian. Because those are fairly abstract, broad concepts, but they're also not especially well defined, which I honestly think is to its benefit. It allows basically for more wiggle room for me to wrap my head around it in a way that makes it work for me. I have seen other personifications of death. I understand the concept of death personified. I understand that, so that sort of inhibits too many restrictions onto what that idea is, and that idea doesn't fit Doctor Who, or at least it doesn't as I understand Doctor Who to be. Maybe it works for other people. Maybe other people don't even question it at all, but just the whole idea of death being this thing that has been following the Doctor and is cutting deals with people, like, that's in concept cool, awesome, cool stuff. Fits the whole motif and theme and vibe of the story, no issues. But having it be Doctor Who specifically is just not. No. Some of the other stuff in there is kind of interesting. Like, so moving off of my issues with that, some of the things they do with it, assuming you can swallow that concept, which, like I said, I can't. Maybe later on I'll be able to square that circle. Right now I can't. But the whole idea of the Doctor actually having crossed a line when he was very young, which is what I think makes it okay. You deal with him as a child, and you know what? Kids do rash things. They do stupid things. They don't understand the consequences of actions they take or choices that they make. Not fully. And so the idea of the Doctor having killed their young bully and then basically offering up the Master to death to be Death's champion because he was too scared to face that consequence himself is an interesting idea, and it's interesting in how it attributes the Doctor's inherent guilt and reluctance to ever allow the Master to die. That's not to say that he never has, but he's always been reluctant. I mean, the Doctor is fairly nonviolent regardless, but depending on circumstances, he will orchestrate things that will result in the death of the villains, and he doesn't do that to the Master. And this does offer an explanation as to why that might be, and it is a form of guilt, and that is an interesting take. It's one that I'm probably not going to take on board in my own headcanon, speaking personally, but points for trying, and setting the viability of that idea aside, it is well executed as a concept, and it's well performed, and there's some nifty stuff done with the voices, and it is well made. It's just that one element of the core concept that I can't quite get with, so it ends up being one of those things where I'm not sure that was a good idea. That's a pretty good execution of that not particularly good idea, which is, I guess for a point of comparison, that's how I feel about something like, say, Red Dwarf Back to Earth, which I think it, wasn't a good idea, but was well executed. Comic books putting Barbara Gordon back on her feet, getting her out of the wheelchair when they kicked off New 52. I think that was a bad idea, but at least in the initial run of it was well executed. So, you know, every now and then I run into these things where like, that's just a bad idea. Like, I'll never stop thinking that's a bad idea. But that's still a good execution of that bad idea. And this kind of, I think that's where I land on this one, at least as of recording. I really do have to kind of sleep on this a bit more, which I suppose begs the question, why didn't you sleep on it and then record the thing? Because I would have run the risk of waking up in the morning and not only not having my feelings change, but also not having my other thoughts as front in my mind. So that's the dice I'm rolling. So yeah, Big Finish, Master. Have you heard it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Do you want to help decide what Big Finish stories I will listen to, or what classic Doctor Who stories I will tackle next? Well, you can support me on Patreon. At any level, you get to take part in those polls to help guide the channel, as well as, you know, help me with stuff and make the whole thing better, hopefully. I'm also on Twitter. You can email me. I sell tees, shirts, blah, 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 blah. Links for all that stuff is down in the description. So until next time, this council is adjourned.